You.
Hello.
I am so sorry about the mix-up yesterday.
It's
Uh,
okay. It's
I
okay.
had a couple of things. I had to go out to California, and my dad was uh, having some health issues, and I think there were 3 or 4 events that were on my calendar that I found out were all 3 hours 3 hours off. So thank you for your flexibility.
That's okay. Let me just double check that I'm recording. I've never really recorded via Zoom before. Okay. All right. Hi.
Hey,
Um, I'm I'm Kaitlyn. I'm the president of the Free Pack. It's a conservative leaning magazine at North Carolina State University. I actually met you at the Libertarian Convention last year.
yeah,
Um, and Yeah, I decided it would be a good thing to consider interviewing a third party candidate, especially with everything these days. And um, I do plan on reaching out to Mark Robinson and Josh Stein, but I'm
good luck.
recently, I know, I'm recently getting over COVID, so I've just been, you know, mainly focusing on that and schoolwork. But I have I have a handful of questions that I've prepared for you, and I do plan on what I'm going to do is I'm going to make an article about this, and then I'll have this uploaded to our socials, and I'm going to make like a shortened version, like a TikTok Insta Reels version,
Okay,
and
awesome.
feel free to share it around however you however you please. So to start off, tell us a little bit about yourself, like your job, academics, where you went to school, things like that.
Yeah, so I'm 42. I was a financial planner and investment advisor by trade. So I started when I moved to the Charlotte region when I was 20 years old, worked my way up there, and ultimately ended up kind of climbing to pretty high in the corporate ladder. Was working at Vanguard in their ultra high net worth team, where our minimum client size was 10 million. Had quite a few centimillionaires and a couple billionaires that I got to interact with. And I kind of had at that point what my wife likes to call my third life crisis, where I said I kind of felt like all I'm doing is helping rich people who, like, even if everything goes to heck, they're still going to be fine. And there's a large group of people that are like so underserved um, that advisors don't work with who need the help the most. So I left that, started my own business, and was doing that for 6 years. Had a few big clients that paid the bills, kept the doors open, and then largely would just kind of help people that, had no money, right? And we're just getting started. And if I could get them to a place where they could put, $1,000 a year into a Roth IRA, I knew I was helping get them into the right spot. Um, and after winning the primary, I'm officially, I guess, semi-retired or unemployed, depending on how you look at it. But I shut down my company to, try and do as much as I could in this race, right? The people of North Carolina voted for me over a well-known libertarian in the primary, and I, kind of took that responsibility that now I have to bring libertarian ideas and solutions to the people of North Carolina, represent the party well, and hopefully move the state in the direction of liberty. If we're able to move my other candidates that I'm competing with for the job in the direction of libertarian policy, I think we can ultimately improve life for a lot of people in North Carolina. So that's kind of what took the tilt there. My background is I'm an econ nerd, delving into that. I read economics books for fun, as weird as that is. But That's kind of what led me to ultimately run. Outside of kind of the work side, I'm passionate about homeschooling. I was forced into homeschooling around COVID, when basically the school sent him home, and it's like, here's all the work, you do it. And I was paying for school. We went to a private school, so I'm like, well, if I'm homeschooling, why am I paying private school tuition? And
Right.
we've since been homeschooling for 4 years now, and my son is thriving, happy. Exploring other interests that he could never do in in other school environments. So that's kind of what took me here. And obviously my I guess background is also as an activist. That's kind of what got my political start. I saw my local government here in Gaston County trampling the rights of some marginalized people. There was a homeless veteran who had his service dog tased, and I saw that story and I was upset. And I just went to talk to my local town council to say, hey, can you get this body cam footage? The news wasn't able to get it. And little did I know that would send me down this path where I became friends with Pastor Moses Colbert, who operates Faith, Hope, and Love Community Enrichment Ministries in Gastonia, which operates out of the oldest Black Baptist church. And the city was going after him too. So we had 9 rallies. People started floating the idea of me running for governor, I think around rally 5, and I laughed it off. And then by rally 9, when we started getting some wins, I said, if I can get a team, because I don't know what I'm doing, never ran for anything before, never planned to run for anything before. If I can get a team to help, I'll do it. If this many people think that I'm the guy to do that. And that's how we are. And here we are today, where I'm on the ballot in less than 2 months.
So that kind of answers a little bit of my next question, which is what made you like decide to run? Like you can elaborate on that.
Yeah, so I think it really came down to uh, a couple of libertarians that I really respect, kind of just dripping on me for a couple of months, where they say, what we as libertarians, our worldview is maybe so far out of the Overton window of how modern America and modern North Carolina thinks, um, that part of it, in addition to, of course, winning the election, right? I'm in an election that they're going to spend between 150 and 200 million dollars between Robinson and Stein. I'm a financial planner. Like knowing how money is spent in business and things like that is literally what I've spent my whole career doing. So to compete with that with like, 15, $20,000, I knew I couldn't play their games. Um, to do that. So I said, what do you want to kind of get out of the run? Obviously, winning is the big goal. That's what we're all trying to do. But I'm a realist. So the party needs to get 2% of the vote to maintain ballot access. It's something libertarians and third parties of all sorts are fighting on an annual basis in every single state. It's something that the Uniparty uses to keep that two-party system in place and make it hard for any challengers. So since we have it, and that allows libertarians across the state to run for office, and there's 50 or so libertarians running in North Carolina, in races that are much more winnable than mine. And I do hope that I'm able to inspire enough people that helps, from the bottom up, help lift some libertarian tickets and some of those that are running. That's kind of the role that I said, okay, I think I can do that. I can message libertarian ideas. I can put together libertarian policy to things that matter to North Carolinians. And I do have a track record of being willing to fight back against the government, which when you're coming out there and saying, you want to drastically shrink the size of government or reinvent systems and provide off-ramps where private citizens and private organizations are able to actually compete with what we see as a government monopoly on certain goods and services. I think that that's something that I'm willing to fight the government on. And when a team came up and I was surrounded with a campaign manager, a comms director, tons of volunteers for all kinds of things, I said, okay, if we're going to do this as a team, I will be the messenger. I will be the communicator. I will kind of bring those ideas out there, and I'll try and inspire as many people as I can to realize that at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter whether the Republicans or Democrats are in charge. They're still going to keep spending way more than we're bringing in. Our great grandchildren are still going to be paying for the debt that they're spending now. The
Yeah.
wars are going to continue. The status quo is going to continue, and rights are going to keep being violated. So I think if we are able to present those ideas and move the needle there, we can set up future runs for governor or even down ballot races in a better position to actually move libertarian policy forward.
What would you consider like your overall platform? Like what's important to you? What issues are the most important to you, especially related to state level government?
Yeah, so I mean, I've on my website, firetheuniparty.com, I've kind of got some key planks that I lay out, but let me talk about a couple of them that are really important to me. One, I think we have a big problem with transparency. We're supposed to be governed by the consent of us, the people,
Yeah.
and the fact that we have a General Assembly, a GOP, Republican majority, supermajority actually, General Assembly, that in the budgeting process basically put forward the ability for the legislators themselves to be the ultimate arbiters of whether information can be released to the public. They can basically classify their own documents, shield them from FOIA requests. And that's the exact opposite of the transparency that I think we should see in government. I think citizens need to be informed. They need to have easy access to know what's going on. And when you're talking about ramming through bills that impact people's lives, I think that it should be, to me, it's almost common sense, but it doesn't seem that that's the reality in our political world.
Yeah.
The people should be allowed to review, comment, engage with their legislators. So that's why one of the platforms I said is, as governor, if for every page of the bill, put it out to the public for that many days. You want a 10-page bill, put it out to the public for 10 days. Let them read, comment, engage with their legislators, call their offices. And then after 10 days, that's when I'd consider signing it. And I think that that does away with another problem that libertarians would have a problem with, and that's those 500-page bills just ramming through all kinds of pork, all kinds of nonsense. If I tell you, okay, it's a 500-page bill, I might sign it after 500 days of public comment, right? And that's how you can kind of stifle those. I think I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the transparency around body cam footage. I think that that's a huge thing that taxpayers pay for. We're paying millions of dollars for that information. And if there was a crime that's committed by a public servant, and there's evidence of that crime that we paid for and we're paying for it to be retained, I think that that should be easier to obtain, mainly because I saw the impact that it has. When a homeless person was abused by the police and there was a video cam proving that was there. I mean, it took 9 months of political pressure, $30,000 in legal fees just to get that. And that's inaccessible to so many North Carolinians, whether there's an officer who, sexually harasses someone or abuses someone or steals from them or plants evidence. There's all kinds of scenarios, and that's just not transparent. I think it comes down to building a culture of transparency in our government. Another big thing I think is education. I see both of the solutions that the Republicans and Democrats are offering as doomed to fail. And I thought that if we wanted to truly fix the education problem that we have plaguing North Carolina, the best thing to do as a libertarian is trust the free market. So I put forward a true free market education plan that I think delivers all of the things that Republicans like to sell us on with school choice, right? Actually giving control to the parents. That's what school
Yeah.
choice promises. It's not what the opportunity scholarships do. My plan actually seeks to truly give real school choice, direct control of the funding to the parents, and it's not tying them to just traditional systems of public school or private school. If they wanted to use that whole almost $13,000 per student that we spend to have a specialized teacher that teaches to their kids' interest, needs, whatever it may be, I think more individualized education, plus the economics of it are just so backwards. We spend, depending on class size, 25, 35 kids, we're spending anywhere from like 300 something thousand dollars to $400,000 per classroom. And of that, our teachers are getting what, maybe 40, 50, maybe 60 if they have some tenure. And to me, the economics are just completely screwing over our teachers. I think a free market system where if you had a teacher who could say, oh, wow, $13,000 per student, you mean I could take 10 kids that I really want to pour into and teach them, and now I can operate almost like a small business on a $130,000 budget. I think we'd attract the best teachers in the world to North Carolina just by allowing a free market distribution of the money we're already spending on education. So education, and then I would say criminal justice reform is another big one. I got my start, obviously, fighting there. Body cam, and I think criminal justice is a tough one because it seems like everybody's being pushed into these two very, very divided camps where you've got the all cops are bad, and then you have this like blindly back the blue. And I think that the vast majority of people probably want and appreciate cops. We just want our cops to be held accountable, right? Like if they do
Yeah.
something bad and they cause $10 million in lawsuit damages, I don't think most taxpayers want their city paying for that, right? So I look to kind of put things in place to make it so that the risk comes off of the taxpayer, and whether they choose to fix that by insurance, backing up with their pensions, I don't care. Let the market, let the departments decide. But we have to take that risk off of the taxpayer, because a $10 million lawsuit against your local police department is $10 million less that you have for roads, bridges, pipes, all of those things, schools, all these things that we count on.
Right.
And then at the same time, we have to ultimately protect our law enforcement officers and treat them with some respect, because they're going out there and risking their lives to keep us safe. And the fact that we're doing that in some cases for less than $50,000 a year is kind of wild. And I think to make the economics work, but between that with criminal justice reform, I think a large part of it is stop policing activities that do not have victims. We spend billions and billions and billions of dollars a year when there is no victim. Meanwhile, there are people who are victims of crimes, right? People who have been raped, assaulted, had a family member killed who are waiting for justice. So to me,
Yeah.
when I look at that and I think, wow, we're spending millions of dollars and how many hours of labor to go after all of these things where there's no victim waiting for justice, why can't we realign the economics, the priorities, the focus in line with actually preventing the violence and harm that's being caused in our society? So those are the three things: transparency, education, criminal justice reform. That and for more, firetheuniparty.com.
Yeah, and next question is like how long have you been libertarian? Like did you always consider yourself one, or did you used to have different political beliefs? And if so, like what made you change your mind if you did?
Yeah, so I've always been a small L libertarian, right? It's probably since I was a teenager. I kind of saw how the ideas, things that I was taught as a child, right? Don't hurt people, don't take their stuff. As I started reading and kind of developing my political identity, um, libertarianism just made sense to me and seemed like it was most in line with the way I viewed the world. However, I grew up in Florida. My first time voting was in the year 2000. And at the time, I was in the bluest county in Florida. So I tended to be one of those voters who sometimes would vote for Democrats, sometimes would vote for Republicans, would try to look at the issues and apply it through my libertarian filter.
Yeah.
And then, eventually I kind of started to see it early on, but I think a lot of people before they become lifelong third party voters or lifelong third party activists or party members, I think they have to deal with that inner struggle of kind of realizing that both sides truly are bad and that neither side is actually going to improve things. And when I realized that, that's when I said, okay, the only time that we're actually going to fix this is with that strong party. I've always considered myself a libertarian. Maybe I need to join the Libertarian Party, get involved, get active. And that's kind of what took me here. So I actually formally registered as a libertarian and got active in the party in 2021.
That's what happened to me.
The journeys are always similar. The timelines are always different.
That's literally what happened to me.
Yeah, you're a lot younger than me. I'm glad it didn't take you as long as it took me because I'm 42 and it was well into my late 30s before I finally decided, you know what, I'm not going to buy into this lesser of two evils game anymore
Yeah.
because I want to vote for good. I don't want to vote for evil.
Yeah, and that kind of segues into the next question. Your main brand being Fire the Uni Party. Um, is what inspired that name? Like what made you realize, okay, this is what I want to be affiliated with, the term Fire the Uni Party?
Yeah. I mean, I think it really just came from conversations we were having. We were floating around kind of campaign slogans, and we knew that was there. And we were kind of devolving into this conversation, right? Where in my journey, I voted for Obama. I voted for Trump the first time. I voted for Democrats and Republicans at all levels of government, and I voted against Democrats and Republicans at all levels of government. And I think what hit me, and maybe it's because I witnessed kind of the past 20 years or so, I realized it doesn't matter which side wins any of these seats because the special interest groups are bribing both of them to get political favors. The
Yeah,
wars are going to continue. The debt is still going to rack up. And that's where I realized that both of those parties don't work for the American people. They work for the donors, and the donors are the same. So that tells me they're the same party. They're putting different flavors on it. They're choosing different social or cultural issues to divide us along so that we don't unify against the fact that they're the ones who put us $35 trillion in debt. So I looked at it and I said, I went through this bouncing back and forth between Republicans and Democrats. And now I just said, I want to see every Republican and every Democrat fired, every single one of them from high levels down, because I think that they've really failed our country. This $35 trillion in debt is reaching a level where I think it's just fundamentally immoral that I have a 13-year-old child who the federal government has put $250,000 in debt. which is just wild to me. He's 13 years old. He's $250,000 in debt to the federal government, assuming he becomes a taxpayer. I hope I equip him with the skills to make enough income to become a taxpayer. But that to me is so fundamentally wrong that I truly think that unifying third parties, bringing people who are essentially dissident, who have looked at this system and realized, hey, it doesn't really matter. I may get one thing I like, two things I like, by going with this branch, of Republican or Democrat. But the reality is, you're going to get stuck with the same five things that you don't want, regardless. And that's why I said it's the same. So I said we need to fire the uniparty. I am. Some people will accuse me of being right wing. Some people will accuse me of being left wing. Some will accuse me of stealing votes from the right, votes from the left. And to that, I say good. I say good to all of the above, because I don't think I fit into either of those boxes. I think I'm libertarian through and through. And I think the more people that we can wake up to the realization that Republicans or Democrats are never going to save us, that's what it's going to take for people to actually have the confidence to go out there and vote third party.
What are your thoughts on these your unit party opponents, so to speak? Like what's your stance on Stein and Robinson,
Yeah,
if you're willing?
sure. Yeah. I mean, I'm going to be honest. I view them as nothing but cogs in the Republican and Democrat machine. I think if Josh Stein wins, he's going to do whatever Kamala Harris and the Democrats in DC want. If DC wants to do something that impacts North Carolina and it's part of their broader agenda for America, I think Josh Stein will go along with it, regardless of what the people of North Carolina want. And I will say the same thing that's with Mark Robinson and Donald Trump. I think that they are both just pieces of that machine. And I don't think that that's what North Carolina needs. I think that when we have a federal government that's continuing to overstep the Constitution and violate the rights and privacy of people in North Carolina, I think we need someone who is completely detached from both of those parties, who can stand up for the interests of the people of North Carolina, who can say no, who's willing to lean on foundational American principles that we find in the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution, specifically the 10th Amendment. I think that those are tools that in modern politics have largely been ignored. And I think that those are the greatest tools that we actually have to push back against all of the things that, if we could get past all of the division being pushed by the Republicans and Democrats, I think that those are the tools that we could use if we unified to actually kind of reclaim some of those American ideals.
Okay, and have you been invited to any official debates or anything like that, or would you say you've been completely ignored, so to speak?
Yeah, so the funny thing is I've been completely ignored and boxed out. It'll be interesting. I don't even think Robinson and Stein are going to debate each other. Spectrum was trying to put one of those on, and they basically gave me 45 days to raise $1 million if I wanted to be included, which I kind of laughed at because my whole campaign strategy from the start was I was never going to spend more than $20,000. So why are you giving me this arbitrary task of raising $1 million when that's not part of my
Yeah.
strategy? So I kind of just laughed that off. But the good thing about the fact that Stein and Robinson are not willing to actually engage in a debate with a third party. In the primary season, I actually had the pleasure of debating the number two Republican and the number two Democrat. So the Forward Party of North Carolina put on a pre-primary debate. Dale Folwell showed up, Justice Mike Morgan showed up, and then Wayne Turner from the Green Party and my primary opponent, Shannon Bray, showed up. And we had a debate, and it was in Charlotte at the Camino Institute. It was put on by the Forward Party. And they use kind of the typical debate things of like straw polls to determine the winner. And I actually won the debate against a sitting state treasurer and a recently retired Supreme Court justice, which I think, as a libertarian who's willing to tell the truth and actually, is a policy nerd who, I was pretty confident that that would be the result. But I think that kind of maybe shot me in the foot. If I bombed that, I think that they'd be much more likely to debate me. But I think the fact that in an audience that included a bunch of Republicans, Democrats, Greens, and forward parties, that the Libertarian was deemed the winner of that debate, I think that probably only lessened my chances that they would actually ever engage with me.
What are your main goals for the campaign? Like, is it um like what do you plan on doing until election day? So on and so forth.
Yeah, I mean, so obviously the big goal is to win, right? Get 2.5 million North Carolinians to check a box next to my name come November. So that's ultimately less in my power and more in the power of the people of North Carolina. All I can do is try to inspire them with a message, try to show them that voting for me is not a wasted vote, but actually a principled vote, because there's so much sentiment. There's so many polls that have shown it that America wants a third party. America wants something out of this. In fact, I think I saw something that said over 50% of the population would have been open to someone outside of the system. The problem is everybody is kind of buying into that, oh, they can't win. But if everybody who truly wanted the uniparty system to stop this machine, if everybody actually just put their faith in that and agreed to vote, I think we could actually win, even with no money spent. It would just take North Carolinians, one, making that decision in their own mind, and then two, becoming amplifiers, right? Where I get that message to them, they get that message to others, the others get that to more others. Like that kind of virality is how we could win. Aside from that, securing ballot access for the Libertarian Party for another 4 years is a huge goal, which I'm very confident in that just based on where the polls were. I think that I feel pretty good about that as well. Moving the needle, right? I've invited Robinson and Stein. I put out 5 or 6 planks. Some of them I think would be ripe for Josh Stein to steal, and some of them I think would be ripe for Mark Robinson to steal. If either of them want to steal any of my policy positions, please do. I will thank you for doing that, congratulate you for that, and I will even tell libertarians that you did it. I'm still going to run against you because I think the totality of my platform is better. But I think if you adopt my platform, that would be good for the people of North Carolina. So that's obviously a goal, is if we can move them in the direction of liberty. And as far as activities that I'm doing, I've still got a lot of events coming out through here. I've traveled the state a good bit, done a lot of different events, podcasts, state fairs coming up, Freedom Fire Fest for Cape Fear. So I'm going to continue doing that. We've got some door knocking events planned in Mecklenburg and the Charlotte region, since that's close to here. So door knocking, phone banking. We're doing a little bit of everything with an all volunteer staff because we don't have the hundreds of millions of dollars that the Uniparty does. But that's kind of been our strategy. We're going to have sign coverage in quite a few counties, and really just trying to do all we can to secure those smaller goals and potentially inspire the big one.
Kind of a spontaneous question I just came up with. If someone were to come up to you and say, wouldn't that just be a wasted vote? What would your argument be against that?
Yeah, I mean, my argument about the wasted vote, and that's something that that's something as a small L libertarian who voted for the Uniparty, that's something that came to my mind as well. But the reality that I see there is, to me, it's the biggest non-wasted vote. I think a vote for a third party candidate is actually the most powerful vote. And the reason that is third parties, especially a third party that's not overtly right or left, the larger a third party gets, the more influence they have in moving actual issues. So if you come to the same conclusion that I do, that regardless of whether we get stuck with a Republican or a Democrat, that all of these things that we know we don't like are going to continue, that makes it a lot easier to realize that, well, hey, even if I don't think I'm wasting my vote, I'm still getting these bad outcomes. And if I look at the result, well, then my vote's wasted if I do that, versus the
Yeah.
alternative of voting against that. Because, you looked the last time around, I think the person who ran for governor before me, I think, did not reach the 2% mark, right? So we were able to maintain our ballot access through a different method. There's a couple of ways we can get that, but if we're able to pull 5% now, right? And then we fast forward 4 more years, now we're at 10%. At 10%, we will be moving policy, because at that point, both the Republican and the Democrat know that the voter base that is now proven to be willing to vote against this one-party system disguised as a two-party system. If they were willing to vote against that, now they have to move. So the longer we wait to show that we actually have rejected the uniparty, the longer we wait to kind of break that pressure that's forcing us into that system, the longer it takes for that support to materialize. So if we're able to come out there and get 5%, 8%, 10%, at that point, I think it becomes very likely where I know in the last question I told you how it'd be great if Robinson or Stein took some of my positions. If I was polling at 15%, they would be thinking about that now. So when we look at third parties, right, it's been 100+ years that it took the Republicans and Democrats to establish this firmly rooted thing. It's not going to be a simple one cycle fix unless the perfect storm of events happens. So I think it really comes down to the fact that if you look at it and say, you know what, I don't want to vote for the lesser of two evils. In fact, voting for evil would be wasting my vote if I believe in something and see that there's someone who I actually believe in, regardless of whether or not I think they can win. If you truly believe that these policies are there and that it's a good person behind there, if you vote that way and encourage others to vote that way, and then that momentum continues, we could change the state and the makeup of politics forever within a couple of election cycles.
That's good. That kind of answers another question that I had on my list, which was basically asking like, do you have hope that the uni party will ever truly be fired, so to speak? And I think you've answered that already in a way that so would you say it's kind of like a long-term game and that you're optimistic about that if eventually, like in the long term, like probably not this year, but like maybe in some more elections from now?
Yeah, if I didn't have hope, I wouldn't be doing this. Right. I mean, that's the
Yeah.
reality. If I didn't have hope, I'm blessed that I can be semi-retired at 42. I'm blessed that I can stay home and homeschool my son and volunteer in my community. I'm blessed that I have the mobility, right? Where if I didn't think there was hope, I could leave, right? Like the reality of the situation is I could leave if I didn't think there was hope. And I do, because when I look out there, and especially I think the campaign has only given me more hope because I see so many people who maybe think of themselves as a Republican or think of themselves as a Democrat. But when I've had a one-on-one conversation and we talk about issues, even on places where we may disagree, I see minds changing and I see people realizing that, hey, the status quo and the way that I've always been led to kind of think about this, maybe it's not the only way. And if I wasn't getting people to kind of think outside the box and wasn't pushing the Overton window on an individual level, I think I would have a lot less hope. But I see so much of that, regardless of whether I go to a pride event or a gun show. I get the same result. Wonderful conversations with wonderful people who want a better future for North Carolina and for the United States of America. And when I see that, it gives me hope. But I do think it is a long game, right? I'd love to see a couple libertarians win at the local level. I think that can only speed it up if we start having libertarian town councils that are governing with libertarian principles, because I think once you have one town there, guess what? That's going to spread. Um,
Yeah.
when all the surrounding companies are like, wait, they've got all these new businesses in here, their taxes are so low. Like when these principles get out there, I think that's things that can help. I think the state level races and the federal level races are, those are going to be what we get at the end. I think we're going to start getting some wins this cycle. I just don't think that, statistically that my race is the most likely. But you fast forward 8, 12 years, if we build on this and if we continue to keep waking people up to what the uniparty is, I do think that we can actually fix this. If nothing else, giving me hope, it's just that the sheer what I would deem incompetence of the uniparty at the federal level. The more that debt grows, the more we devalue our currency, and I hate to say it, the worse off regular people are for it. Um, I'd like to solve things faster than that. It would be much less painful for regular people if we can do that. but we finally hit a tipping point somewhere in the world, right? Argentina now has the first elected libertarian head of state. It only took their country being completely wiped out by poor policies for 100 years to do that, with, th three-digit inflation year over year, completely wiping out the middle class. I would like to hope that we can save America before that happens. But in the long run, I do think that libertarian ideas can save our country, whether it's now or if they screw it up to the point where we become just like Argentina. Hopefully we can rebuild from that. And I think libertarian solutions are ultimately going to be the best solutions. So I just hope we can get it done sooner rather than later, mainly for all the people that will suffer if we keep letting Republicans and Democrats appease their donors at the expense of regular people.
Good, good. And thoughts on like youth involvement? Like, what would you say Republicans and Democrats are doing wrong? Like, how libertarians usually approach youth involvement, if there's anything that libertarians can do better, and like how can libertarians promote youth activism in a different approach than the two main parties, so to speak?
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, so I think strategically, right? I think young people, and this is something that kind of just makes me scratch my head a little bit, because it makes me even think back to like when I was young, and not to date myself too much. I already did say I'm 42. But John Mayer wrote a song, "Waiting for the World to Change," and you go back and you read those lyrics, and it's actually kind of wild. And we still see this pervasive thing where just young people don't get engaged in the system. Where if all of the young people just committed, you know what, we're going to get engaged, we could change things right now, this cycle. So I think that libertarians need to first win the war of ideas, right? I think that I believe that we're correct philosophically, right? As a student of economics, you generally see Republicans falling into the classical or Chicago school, Democrats kind of leaning a little bit harder into the Keynesian school of economics. As a libertarian, I believe in the Austrian school of economics. So I think if young people truly can start to understand um, economics, I think that that's something that can get them engaged. And I think it's ultimately going to come down to who can inspire young people. I could see why young people could be uninspired because they look at the system, they see older generations, we're $35 trillion in debt, rent, groceries, like everything is so expensive. And it seems like it's an insurmountable problem. And I think for a lot of young people, they kind of tune out because I'm not sure that either party really does a good job reaching them. I think that some of them do on certain kind of feeling type of things, but when it comes to actual policy, I don't think that a lot of them do a good job of reaching young people. So, I mean, that's one of the things that I'm looking to do. We've got a couple of campus events planned to get out and try and engage young people. I've at any time one of the colleges has reached out to me. I love interviewing college students because I'm happy to talk about all of these things. Because for me, a mind that's seeking education, and that later on in life, like a lot of people stop seeking education, but like young people who are still in college, they're seeking education. The problem is, I don't think anybody is really doing a good job of seeking to educate them on libertarianism. There's a few out there, but we have to connect them because I do think that if you have that thirst for knowledge, that desire to think analytically and think steps down the line and use logical inference and different things that we do in that critical thinking process, I think that young people could be a huge demographic for libertarians. I think it's just a matter of reaching them. I'm 42. I'm not of the TikTok generation, but we've got a couple of more volunteers coming on, and I'm hoping to, before early voting starts, kind of start getting a TikTok presence too. But I found most of the interactions, right? Nothing beats an interaction of engaging and having a conversation with someone and showing them, that you're a real person, that you're actually thinking things through. Because I think that that's kind of a little surprising. Most people aren't expecting that. When I see these polished Republican and Democrat politicians, I almost feel like I'm watching a robot. I wonder if they're even
Yeah.
thinking or if they just have these slag taglines, these slogans, these things memorized. And I've been to different events where it's like, they'll ask a question and I actually seek to answer the question that's being asked of me. and I just see them come in and they just completely ignore the question and just talk about what they want. And I understand why they do it, and I've picked up on it and considered it as a strategy, right? I just find it personally dishonest, and if I'm gonna if I'm gonna do that, it's just not who I am. So I'm just gonna tell people the truth, and if there's a question that they don't ask that I want to talk about, I'll just try to bring it up later.
Yeah, that's I have seen that a lot. I've been around since about like high school. I would go to debates and stuff on a state level and state and local level, and it's just insane to me how basic taglines can really get a crowd going. And but I do admire integrity and stuff of basically just answering the question. You know,
The,
like
the event last night, it was really funny because there's one person, and I'm just impressed with their ability to do this, with how they present it. And if it doesn't make the article or whatever, if you don't want to put this out there because I'm naming names, but I was at this event, and Jeff Jackson, who's running for AG, the question was like on um, abortion and women's health and affirmative action, right? And it was at an Alpha Kappa Alpha event. And he basically just came out and he's like, "So, what are my thoughts on, abortion, affirmative action? Well, let me tell you what one big problem is. It's fentanyl." And then he just went into his whole thing on fentanyl. And I'm just like, when the whole thing was done, I'm like, you said absolutely nothing about the question that they asked. Um, Talked about what you wanted to ask, and you presented it well. I disagree with your conclusion, your policy, and all that, but how you came across, and I just looked at that and I'm like, that's such a skillful political move. And he's so good at being a politician. But to me, it's so inauthentic. And I'm just using, there's Republicans who do it, Democrats do. I'm just using Jeff as an
oh,
example because it happened
I've seen
last
it.
night.
I've seen it. Yeah,
Yeah.
I've seen a lot of it. It was at the debates too on the
Yeah.
presidential level.
Yeah, presidential level too. But it's just I'm not going to do that. It's just, if someone cares to ask me a question, I'm going to take it in good faith that they want to know my answer to that question, and I'm going to do that whether it wins me votes, loses me votes. I'm just going to tell you the truth, because the other politicians aren't going to do that, and we need more of it. So if nothing else, let me lead by example.
I guess for one final question, like any advice you'd give to NC State students and like anything else you'd like to add that hasn't been mentioned yet during this interview?
Yeah, yeah. So first off, get engaged, do your research. Don't listen to the politicians. Don't listen to the celebrities. Don't listen to the influencers. Look at the policy. Understand, think deep, the same way you take that approach in education, or like that you would approach a philosophy class. Take that same approach in politics. Get engaged. Don't be afraid to think outside the box and ask uncomfortable questions. Go down those things, and ultimately understand you own your vote. The system wants you to vote for the lesser of two evils, because as long as you do vote for the lesser of two evils, you are upholding that system. If you think that the system is unjust and is not representing your interests, have the courage to vote against it. If you like what I'm saying and I'm that third party candidate, head to firetheuniparty.com. We're always looking for volunteers to phone bank, help knock on doors, talk to their friends, get involved. Any way you want to help the campaign, we're always looking for volunteers. And just get and stay engaged. Don't give in to groupthink. Don't give in to societal pressure. Be an individual. Be a free thinker.
Thank you. And that's about it that I have.
Awesome.
I like to thank you for this opportunity.
Yeah.
Um, I'm a I'm I'm glad you did this for the free pack. We're a small magazine at NC State, and we don't get much traction, but I'd like for that to change so people know that there's like alternatives to like the technician, so to speak, which is like the main newspaper at school, which
Yeah.
and we value uh, we value free speech and letting people have their say. And And I think you definitely did that tonight. So like, I'd like to thank you for your time, and I hope you have a great weekend. And I'll update you on my article writing progress and
Okay.
the video editing side of things, since I'm going to be editing this and whatnot. So I'll be in touch.
Awesome. Maybe I'll see you at a future Libertarian convention or
You
anything
will.
else. So
You
awesome.
will.
Well, thank you so much, Kaitlyn. Have a great evening and a great weekend.
You too. Bye bye.
Bye bye.